Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca, otherwise known as Hip Knit Hooray Online, and this is podcast episode 15. So starting off with an announcement and disclaimer, I got a microphone because I've been wanting to improve the sound quality, but the microphone that I have now is a little sensitive, I will say. This is the second time that I filmed this podcast episode because the first time there was this weird popping noise from the microphone and it just basically made the footage unusable. And so I took the risk now. I'm plugging it in because it does make the sound louder, I believe. But yeah, let me know down below if you think the sound quality is worse. I'm hoping it's better, but let me know if it's worse and I will try again or maybe try and get another microphone. But yes, I did get this new microphone and it is a bit finicky, so there's that. But in this podcast episode, I wanted to share some finished objects. So in my last podcast episode, I had the most number of whips that I've ever had on the go because of my ornaments. And so I finished those, and I guess you could say in this podcast episode I have the most number of finished objects I've ever had to share. So maybe we'll just get into the finished objects. So the first one that I have is a garment, and it is my Audrey top by Petite Knit. This top is a bottom-up high halter neck tank top knit on 4mm needles and calls for 1 strand of DK weight or 2 strands of fingering held together. And I made quite a few modifications to this pattern. It was a summer knitting plan with stash yarn, so I'm glad that I knit it because it was relatively quick, I would say, but I did do some modifications which kind of delayed the process. So maybe I'll just say the modifications now. I ended up working this tank top middle up, which is a modification that's explained in the pattern with Judy's Magic Cast On, so I could work the shaping here first, the neckline shaping and the back shaping first, and then knit the rest of the body afterwards. So I worked it middle up. I worked this folded down picot hem right here, and I was really happy with this modification. Instead of a knit bind off for the rest of the body, I also did 1x1 rib for the back and then the bottom as well. What else did I do? Oh, I shortened the shaping here along the top so it was shallower here and it wasn't so low in the underarm, so I worked less decrease rows here. I sized down to 3.5mm needles because I like the finished fabric a little bit more. And then because of that, I also need to size up in the pattern. So I knit a size medium, and the finished bust sizing for this kind of equaled out to be between an extra small and a small. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And how I feel about the top is I have mixed feelings. I like the top, but I don't love the top. And a part of that has to do with the yarn that I used. So I used Premier Yarn's Cotton Fair in the shade Cream, which is a cotton acrylic blend. It's 52% cotton and 48% acrylic. And I've used that yarn before in previous projects. I used that yarn in the, I think it's called Hot Pink or Fuchsia. It's like a descriptive color. That's a shape name. I think it was Hot Pink, and I held it with a strand of mohair for my Marseille sweater, and I really like that finished object. The garment, it doesn't pill, it's very comfortable to wear. Yeah, I really like it, and I had the yarn for this project, the cream, already in stash, but I don't love it for summer garments, even though it's a cotton blend, and it's because of the acrylic. I find that this finished fabric is a little bit thick and not that breathable, and I also find that a lot of summer garments have a little bit more simple finishing to them, like you don't have thick bands of 1x1 rib like you would in a sweater, and so it's kind of hard to manipulate this finished fabric, I assume because of the acrylic. So it doesn't create the most clean finish, and then that's why I had to do some modifications like the 1x1 rib at the top, and even this picot hem, it's straightened out but not fully 100%. It still kind of curls at the front like that when I wear it. And so I think if I were to knit this top again, I would spend a few more dollars and get still a cotton blend, but a cotton wool blend, or maybe silk for this garment. I will say though, I got this yarn quite a few years ago when I was still a student, and so I didn't have a lot of money at the time to spend on my hobbies. And so I wouldn't say that this is an absolutely terrible yarn and I would never use it again. I think it's a great yarn if you're on a budget and you still want to use a cotton blend yarn for summer fibers instead of 100% cotton. I'd still recommend it if you're on a budget and you can spend more money on yarn. But for me now, I think I would spend the few extra dollars and get a cotton wool blend in the future. So I would say that's why I don't love this finished object. I like the pattern. It's a petite knit pattern, so I think you could say that most of them are really well written. They're very clear, so I have no complaints with the pattern. I did do a lot of modifications to the top though, but it was a good base to go off of. The only thing that I would say about the fit of the top is I found that in the sample, the top is quite low on the underarm here, and I wanted it to sit a little bit higher up. I just prefer the fit of that, so I would have preferred if the underarm shaping here or the length from the underarm to the top here was a little bit shorter as written in the pattern, but all the other modifications that I made were more aesthetic changes or changes because of the yarn. And otherwise, I'm really happy. I really like the fit of this high halter neck, and I'm happy to have it in my wardrobe for the rest of summer. And the next finished objects that I have to share are a little bit out of season. They are my Christmas ornaments. So I am on a bit of a personal challenge right now to use as much of my scrap yarn that I can in knit ornaments. My scrap yarn bins that I have over here are overflowing, and so I really want to use up as much of the scrap yarn that I have there to make room for more leftover scraps from other future projects. So I've been working on quite a few ornaments. The first ones that I have to share are these, which are the Little Cottage, which is the Little Cottage pattern by Agate 2-Tack. So I have some of these. This is the leftover from my Lakes V-neck pullover. These are the leftovers from my April cardigan. I still have leftovers even though I made ornaments last year with this yarn. And this is a really fun, straightforward pattern. It's a pretty quick knit as well. You can knit a cottage in maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, including all the finishing work. And I sized up to 4mm needles for this, so it is a little bit bigger than the sample, and I also embroidered a little gray door on them. So this is a really cute pattern. I really like it, and I just stuffed it with some polyfill. And then the next grouping of ornaments that I have are the Christmas Toadstools by Merrin Curley. So this pattern is a really fun pattern. It creates this really cute looking mushroom, and I've been using my prized Noro Silk Garden Sock Solo in the shade S1 Omitama, and I've been making mushrooms in all sorts of colors. I will say though that I am kind of wasting a little bit of the sock yarn, which I hate to say for these toadstools, because even though there's a bunch of different color changes in the toadstools, I try to be as cohesive as possible. So I tried to start each toadstool with a new main color change. Like this one there's like blue and purple in it, but the main color is pink. This one's brown. So I've been trying to do that. So I have been cutting some sections in between and saving them. And there's also certain colors in the bald, which I don't think would look the best for a toadstool. Like there's some gray, brown, and navy blue sections. And I don't know, I just don't think it would look that cute, or I don't know, maybe other people would like it. It's just not my style, but I don't know what to do with those sections. I haven't thrown them away. I won't throw them away, but I still have those parts of the sock yarn, so I'm thinking that maybe I'll just find another ornament that will work well for it, maybe put it into some sort of sweater or sock ornament that I make. So apart from that little color change section, I've been making a bunch of these ones because I find that they're really fun. And this pattern I knit with 3.5mm needles, so I also sized up from the recommended needle size, and I also have made some modifications to change the mushroom shape. If you can see here, you kind of work these increases in a bit of a spiral, and I've worked some more increases here to create a wider mushroom, and then more decreases along the top as well. So made quite a few of these. And then the last ornament that I have to share are these striped sweaters. And the pattern that I use for the base of this is the Mini Crop Puff by the Wandering Flock. But I have made some changes. I sized up to 3mm needles for these sweaters. I added some stripes. Because of the sizing, since I sized up to 3mm needles, I also have changed the raglan increases here. And I also changed the bind off. I have bound off these sweaters with tubular bind off, which is totally unnecessary. Or I don't know. I don't know if it's totally unnecessary, but I like the look of tubular bind off on my own sweaters, so I took the time and did tubular bind off on these mini sweaters, and I just think it creates, a really nice finish even on these mini sweaters that are not going to be worn.
Hi, Editing Rebecca here. Unfortunately, the popping noises have returned, so I will be voicing over this little bit instead. What I was saying is that the tubular bind off takes a bit more time, but I think it's totally worth it. And this pattern is great if you want to add stripes as well, because they don't need a lot of yarn, so you can use really tiny yarn scraps.
So I think I was working on this one in my last podcast episode, and then I made this one as well. So I have a few more striped color combinations that I want to work. So this has been a really fun pattern. And I've just been knitting as many ornaments that I can with the scrap yarn. Like I said, I may try to sign up for some holiday craft fairs, so it's always nice to have some stock at hand. But if not, these will all be given away to friends and family.
Hi, I'm back. I'm really sorry for this. I'm going to try and fix it in my next video. Essentially, I was just wrapping up the finished ornaments and wanted to move on to ornaments that I have on the needles right now. I have these Pop-Tarts, which were a favorite among my friends and family last year. And the Pop-Tart is really simple. It's essentially just a rectangular tube. You cast on stitches and then you're just knitting in the round on 4mm needles. I have the stitch count and sizes saved on my Ravelry project page if you wanted to take a look at that. And so I wanted to make a few more of these this year.
I'm using a different scrap yarn, but still along the same lines, like a warm tone brown. This was, I think the brand was Zara Merino or something like that. I got it from Romney Wool's, their basement section, which is a local yarn store to me, and in their basement it's full of yarn that's on sale from a lot of brands that I've never heard of before, but I had this left over, so I didn't have that much left. And then this is Cascade Heritage held double for a DK weight gauge. So I knit these, and then I've kind of been procrastinating adding the felt and the tube beads because it does take a little bit of time, but I have the base of the Pop-Tart ready. And I am I'm on a bit of a candy theme because my next whip that I have is this very odd shape, but it will be folded into a pretzel like this. I'm almost done. I just need to work a few more centimeters, maybe 5 or so centimeters. And this is based off of this pretzel pattern that I made last year. It is, I want to say, I can't remember if it's the cute salty pretzel or if it's the little salty pretzel. I think it's the cute salty pretzel by Julita Bialkowska. And this is a really cute pattern. I knit this last year. And I have made some changes to it, like I have increased the needle size because I didn't really want to be working on such a small needle for this tube, so I sized up and changed the stitch counts for 3mm needles. I also am working this in a thin stripe pattern, so it's kind of like candy. It's 2 rounds of one color before I switch to the other color, and I'm doing a slip stitch for the color change, so there's less of a jog, which I think is working really well. And it naturally curves this tube so it can fold into the shape of a pretzel, so actually it's working out quite well. And this yarn here is kind of a tangled mess right now because I'm working 2 strands of it at a time, and I pulled from the inside and then all of this came out, so yeah, it's a little bit messy. But this is actually from my grandma's stash. My grandma used to knit and crochet quite a bit. I have quite a few things from when I was a baby that she made, but she hasn't knit and crochet for years, I think because it's really tough on her hands. So we have a lot of her yarn still and stash, and so I kind of go back to my parents' place and I pick colors that I like from her stash. So I really like this color. I wouldn't have used it for a garment or accessory. I also don't know what it is. It kind of feels like it could be wool, but maybe it's not. I don't know. So it's better to use it for accessories like this. So I have a bunch of other scraps in fun colors like a bright blue, a bright green, a bright pink like this. So I'm thinking of making some really fun candy themed pretzels. So I have those, and then the next ornaments that I have, the next few ornaments that I have as well are also a weird shape. It's these that I've knit, these little tubes that I want to knit into some candles. So I have an old coworker that she said for her Christmas tradition, her family puts candles on her Christmas tree, and I think maybe it's like a Danish tradition or some sort of Scandinavian tradition. Honestly, I'm not too sure, but I thought that idea was really cute, and if it doesn't work out, then it's fine, but if I like them, then maybe I'll gift a few of them to her. But I want to knit the base of this candle with wool, so I used actually the leftovers from my Audrey top, and then some mohair, and then I'm thinking of attaching some sort of like paper flame to it, maybe with some scrapbooking paper or some gold paper. I have a vision in my head of what I kind of want it to look like. I just need to go to the craft store to get some nice scrapbooking paper for it. So this is the base that I have ready, and I'll attach some sort of flame to it. I haven't figured out what it will be yet, but those are some of the other ornaments that I have. And the last ornament that I have on the go right now are these hats. I'm trying to self-draft a little hat because I think that it looks really cute as an ornament, but I also want to use these and add them to little gifts that I'm going to give to friends and family. Like if I'm gonna gift a wine bottle or a champagne bottle, I really like how this can fit over the top of that bottle. I think it'd be really cute, and then after that they can use it as an ornament. So I've been trying to self-draft a hat because I find that self-drafting garments are very intimidating to me. I love following patterns for that. I have no interest in trying to self-draft or write a pattern for that, at least right now. But with ornaments, it's a little bit easier because they're so small and they're so quick, and it's fun to play with construction. So I have a few iterations of this hat, and I haven't found the perfect one yet. So this was the first one that I made. All of these are knit with 3.5 millimeter needles and Hobby Extra Fine Merino. So this was the first one that I made, and I just thought it was a little bit squat for a hat, and the top is not the neatest finish. So that was my first iteration. Then this was my second, which I thought was better, but I think the increases at the top are too sharp, and it's a little bit too pointy and cone-like, so I didn't really like this one. And then this was the third version that I made, and I thought the shape was better, but I only decreased, I decreased on both sides here, but only at these sides, so I think it looks good from the front. But if I put it on a wine bottle, or some sort of bottle, and I gift it, I just think it looks a little bit weird from the side, so I wasn't too happy with that. And then I made this one, which is basically just knitting in the round and then rapidly decreasing at the top. And I think I like this one the least. It looks like a piece of bread to me. And so I don't love that. So I'm going to go back, and my fifth iteration is going to be knitting a combination of these two. So those are all the ornaments that I have on the go, the finished ones, and then the ones that I have as works in progress. I don't know if I want to keep talking about them on my podcast because it's only August now, and so I will be making them for the next several months, and I don't know if people are really interested in hearing about them. So yeah, let me know. I may talk about them, or I may just quietly work on them in the background, but I am really enjoying the process of knitting them so far. And now moving on to whips, I think I'll talk about the My Honey Vest first. So, I am almost finished the My Honey Vest, and I hope you are not sick of seeing it on my podcast. I realized that I started knitting this almost 6 months ago, so it's definitely been a process to make, but I've been taking my time with it. I've also been making mistakes on it, so that's kind of why it's been taking so long, but I'm almost done. So this is what I have so far of the vest. I finished knitting the body section flat, and then now I've been working the decreases along the front here to create the curved hem. And then after that, once I'm finished that, I can just pick up stitches for the double folded hem here, and then work the ties as well. So I think that the decreases here to create the curved hem is a really clever design detail. I think it adds a lot to the fit of the vest, and it's worked in a very similar manner to how you work the increases here to shape the armhole as well as the neckline. You are alternating between a decrease brioche repeat and a regular brioche repeat, so it's a pretty gentle slope. And I'm about halfway through all the decreases. I still don't know how to really read my work on the right side for brioche, so I've been counting it all by placing stitch markers there on the inside. And so far it's going pretty good. You may see that there's this little strand here of Lang Yowl reinforcement thread, and that's because I had to frog back. I had almost finished the body flat and I was ready to work on decreases, and then I just took a step back and I was like, let me just scan the vest and see how things are going. And I noticed that there was this one line of knitting that was just totally off from the brioche, and I was like, no, I don't know what I did there. And I didn't notice it for a few days of knitting, so I had knit like a decent chunk of this before I noticed it, and I was so frustrated with myself. And what I think I at the time I didn't know what I did. I just needed to frog it, but in thinking about it, I think I worked a background color row with the main color instead of the background color. So there's that. If you ever knit brioche, just be careful about that, because yeah, it burned me, and so now I needed to frog back. And I've gotten past the point of where I did it, so it's totally fine, but I probably could have gotten more progress on that vest if I noticed my mistake a little bit earlier. So it's okay. It's very in character that this vest is just going to take me as long as possible, but once I finish the decreases, I'm going to pick up around the hem. I think what I'm going to do for that is the pickup for the armhole here was, I think I picked up too many stitches because it does flare out a little bit. So for the body hem, I think I'm going to pick up maybe like 5 out of the 6 stitches or 6 out of the 7, something like that, just so it doesn't flare out so much. And then for the I-cord ties, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. So, sorry, they're not I-cord ties, they're double knit ties, but I'm thinking of modifying them to I-cord ties. So, I'm going to insert a picture of what the sample looks like, and I really like the look of how structured the ties are, but I do find that they're a little bit big. And so instead of double knit, I was thinking of knitting some thinner versions of I-cord ties for the two fronts, but I worry that the I-cord is maybe a little bit too floppy, and I do like the structure of the double knit, so I haven't really decided which tie version I'm going to do, but I may modify that. But I'm still going to work 2 of them because I think that it's really cute, but I may do I-cord instead. So we'll see. Hopefully in the next podcast episode I will have figured all of that out and it will be a finished object, so I won't be on to month 7 of this vest, but I'm almost there with the My Honey vest. The next whip that I have to share is the Jenny Jacket V-neck by Petite Knit. Sorry, I have some Noro scraps on this mohair. And the yarn that I'm using for this is Knit Picks palette in the shade Finley Heather, and then Knit Picks Aloft in the shade Plover. And what I have so far for this jacket is I have worked almost the 2 front panels, and I'm almost ready to join it, the body together. So I finished the right panel here, and then now I'm working on the left panel. And the way that the V-neck is shaped is you're working increases along the side here, and then this side here is just flat. And I am still going back and forth as to what size I want to knit for this jacket. So the way that it works is the extra small and the small is identical. It's all the same for this section of the jacket. The only difference is how much you pick up on the underarm. And I was initially going to knit the extra small because I wanted it to be a little bit more fitted, but it's very tiny right now, and I know that the smock stitch is going to grow a lot with blocking, and so I think my eyes are just deceiving me here. I could do a mid-project block and then just reassure myself, but it is looking very tiny, so I'm very tempted to cast on the small, but I think I'll just go and trust the gauge swatch and knit the extra small, which is the size that I would have knit for myself. And yeah, I'm almost ready to join it in the round. Oh, another thing about this pattern is I was initially very overwhelmed with the increases here because the pattern has written out the increases here in a 24 round repeat. And so every round for 24 rounds is written out. And at first I thought it was, yeah, I was a little bit overwhelmed, and I didn't think it was totally necessary, but after knitting it, I'm glad that it's all written out because it's actually more complicated, I guess, than I would have thought. There are increases here on one side, but you are increasing in a different way. You're either increasing in purl stitch or you're increasing in knit stitch. And you're also, when you're working the smock here, there's certain times where the smock is closer to the edge and you incorporate the increases, and sometimes you don't. Like there's this really long section here of rib that doesn't get smocked for a while. And I think that having all the rows written out that way, it just eliminates any of that confusion. I wonder if it would have been easier for it to be charted instead of written out. I don't really know, but I'm glad that it was there. I will say though that eventually you kind of get the hang of it. It's not difficult or anything. It just seems like a lot of words all at once. At least for me it did. So yeah, if you do knit this pattern and you see that, yeah, it may be a little bit overwhelming, but I'm almost there to join it in the round, and it'll just be just endless smock stitch to go. And then, yeah, this is probably going to be on the podcast for quite a few more months because it is a year-long knit-along that I'm doing with my knitting friends, but I am making some progress on it. And yeah, it's a really fun knit, and it's still small enough where it's a portable project for me. Okay, I feel like I'm going through all of these whips very, very quickly, but my next whip is also another design by Petite Knit, and it was cast on. I don't think I had cast it on yet in my last podcast episode, but I definitely talked about it. And it was also a pattern that I mentioned in my late summer knits pattern roundup, and it is the Cumulus Tee by Petite Knit. So here it is. I have knit quite a bit of it. I finished the entire yoke, and then I've just joined it in the round for the body. So I've worked about maybe about 2 centimeters underneath the arm, and yeah, we're definitely moving along with it. I am using Illimani Sabri, which I'm really excited to work with. I haven't worked with this yarn before. It's also a cotton yarn. It's 85% cotton, 15% baby alpaca, and I really like how it looks. The alpaca adds a lot of dimension to the yarn, I would say, and it is a, like, pretty loosely spun 2-ply yarn. And in my experience, 2-ply yarn can kind of have a weird texture and stockinette, but I think it's looking pretty even, and it'll even out a little bit more with blocking. The only thing is, this finished fabric is quite a bit heavier than other versions of the Cumulus Tee that I've knit. So this is the third version. This is the second one that I knit last year, and I knit this with Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino. And even though it's the same gauge, this one just feels a lot heavier, and I think it's because cotton is a heavier fiber, and so is alpaca. So yeah, it's just a little bit heavier, but it should still be okay to wear in late summer, as the theme was for that video, that pattern roundup. So I have around 850 meters of this yarn, or no, sorry, I have 800 meters of this yarn, which is 50 more meters than I had when I knit this tee. So I want it to fit identically to this tee, but I just want to extend the sleeves of it as much as I can with that extra 50 meters. So I am playing a little bit of yarn chicken, but I know it can be done. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish knitting the rest of the body with this remaining first skein of Illimani Sabri. And then what I'm going to do is I might pick up stitches and then knit the neckline just to get the I-cord neckline out of the way. And then I might knit the rest of the body to the length of this tee because I already know that I can get this tee to be this long with how much meterage I have, and then split the remaining amount in half using my yarn scale, and then knitting the sleeves, and then just trying to knit those as long as I can. I think that's the best process to go about winning against yarn chicken, and also trying to get the sleeves as long as possible, because this body is quite cropped in this one, but I do like the length of it. I think it works really well with dresses and skirts, so I wouldn't want it longer than this, even though it is short. So yeah, I'm going to think a little bit more about the process, but I think that's how I'm going to do it, and I'm really liking it so far. I thought about knitting the Cumulus Tee O-neck instead of the Cumulus Tee V-neck, because this is the third one, as I keep saying.
Hi, Editing Rebecca here for the last time. I was saying that I really like the look of the V-neck. I find that the raglan sits wider on this tee, so it really elongates the shoulders, and you can see here that the raglan line sits further out.
And then the V-neck is just a little bit more comfortable. I think I said in the summer, late summer knits pattern video that I thought that the Cumulus Tee was almost the same as this, but with the crew neck. Because I thought it's a similar gauge, but someone had left a comment saying that the distribution of raglan stitches is a little bit different. So my mistake, it is slightly different and more different than I thought. But I still think you could modify this to be an O-neck if you really wanted in that pattern, but I decided to do the V-neck. So it is going to be my third iteration of this Cumulus Tee, but I really just can't get enough. And it is a really nice, relaxing knit. I have another stockinette project on the needles, but this one is just truly mindless stockinette on 3mm needles, which is, yeah, one of my favorite process knits. And the last whip that I have to share is also a cast on that came about from the Late Summer Knits Pattern Roundup, and it is the Barco Bolero by Anne-Sophie Sorensen. So I really wanted to knit a bolero this season because they're quite trendy, so I kind of wanted to knit one because it's a really nice process knit to experiment knitting with this type of silhouette. And also, even if I don't wear it a ton, it would still be like a fun, process knit. But I do think I'm going to wear it because I do think that boleros look really nice as a summer layering piece over dresses, and I have this black tiered dress that I think this would be perfect over. So yeah, I did want to knit it specifically for that piece already in my wardrobe, and I chose the Barco Bolero because I really liked the construction of it and I really liked the fit. So the yarn that I'm using is Loops and Thread Cozy Wool Merino in the shade Black, and this is a merino and acrylic blend yarn. And I already know from experience, I've used this yarn quite a bit in previous projects, and I know that it grows quite a bit with blocking because it's superwash merino. So the pattern is knit with 4mm needles, and the designer uses 2 strands of Sire yarn. I wrote them down because I was going to forget. The yarn that's suggested for the pattern is 1 strand of Trio 2 and 1 strand of Bomelin held together. But I am able to achieve gauge, but I did size down to 3.5mm needles because I know that this yarn is going to grow with blocking. So yeah, size down to 3.5mm needles, and I finished one of the panels. This is also the first time that I'm knitting one of Anne-Sophie Sorensen's designs. I really like a lot of her designs. I think they're super modern. They're very clean, like gives me a very clean girl aesthetic, I guess you could say. And I'm interested in knitting more of her patterns, but this is the first one that I've knit from her. So I find that the pattern, the way it's written right now, I'm not having any issues necessarily with following along, but I do find them to be quite wordy. So I do have to read the entire section and then kind of digest it and then knit it and understand, which I guess you do anyways when you read patterns, but I don't know, I just find that I have to read the instructions over a few times before I kind of get what she's saying. But I do find that the way that this top is worked is really cool. It's very different. I haven't done this before. So in terms of the construction, there's 2 panels for the front and the back. You knit them in the exact same way. So you knit them flat, and then under the arm, you join them together to work them in the round, and then you seam up the top edge here before you pick up stitches, and then you work the sleeves in the round. So there's 4 different components. In terms of the neckline of this bolero, it is a boat neckline, which I really like how it looks. And you cast on stitches in a way to get this little notch here. So the seam is a little bit lower because you have to seam the top closed. So yeah, you cast on stitches and then you work it in a way so it has a little bit more of this notch here. And then after that, you're working the panel down flat, and then you start working. I don't know if you can tell, you probably can, but there is a curved hem here because you work short rows. And I thought when you do short rows, the only time I've really done short rows, I can't think of a time where I did it in this way. You work almost like a boomerang. Like you do one side and then you knit the short row, and then you work to the other side, then you work the short row, and then you work the other side. So you kind of go back and forth. The way that this pattern is written is you do the short rows for one side first, and you work short rows outwards like this, and then once you're finished, then you knit across to resolve all the short rows all together at the end, and then you go over to the other side, and then you're working the short rows here in that same way. You're working the short rows outwards, and then you'll resolve them all and knit across. So I finished them on this side, and this is how curved the front piece, and I guess the back piece, because they're worked the same way, is going to be. And I am almost done working them here. I'm about, I would say about like 2/3 of the way done. So it does create a curved hem here for the bolero, which I think looks really cool, and I think I'm excited to see how it's going to fit as well. So I have this front panel, I'm going to work the back panel, and then try to work the sleeves. I have a little bit of a dilemma with this pattern. So I mentioned before that the yarn that's used in this pattern, it's 2 strands of yarn held together, but I find that the yardage estimates for this pattern they're not really that clear. So I had to buy this pattern on Anne-Sophie Sorensen's website. She doesn't have a Ravelry store, which I always like to purchase my patterns through Ravelry because I like them on my pattern library page, but I also like to look through projects of the design first before I get the pattern. So, and I like to do that to see what yarn people use, the colors, and then the main thing is the yardage estimate, so I can kind of determine what kind of yarn would work. So this pattern says you need for an extra small about 350 grams, but it doesn't say if that's 350 grams of each yarn or 350 grams total, and then divide that by 2, about 175 grams each, which I don't think it would be that. I think that'd be kind of weird, but I don't really know. And so if it is on its own though, I think it's kind of a lot, which is why I was a little bit confused. So 350 grams of Trio 2, for example, is 1,225 meters, which just seems like a lot for a really cropped sweater, I guess, that's knit on 4mm needles. I thought that was a lot of yarn of a single strand for this type of silhouette. And so I was thinking that maybe it's half of that, so maybe around 700 meters, and I don't really know, and there's no Ravelry project pages for me to kind of look at what the estimates are and how much yarn other people used. I had this similar problem when I was working a spectacle strict pattern. I found that the yardage estimates that the designer specified were a lot more than what you actually need for the pattern, so yeah, it was a little bit unclear. I have about 500, maybe 550 meters of this cozy wool merino, and I'm kind of hoping that I can get this bolero done with that much yarn. Yeah, it's kind of a stretch, but I didn't want to go out and get more yarn unless I have to. So worst case is, yeah, I'm a little bit embarrassed because I thought I could get this top done in 550 meters, and I go out and get another ball of this yarn, but I'm quite confident that I can knit this bolero with 550 meters, so we'll see. But yeah, the yardage estimates in the pattern are a little bit unclear and maybe, dare I say, inaccurate. But I haven't knit the bolero yet. I haven't finished it yet, so we'll see. But I really don't think I'm gonna need 1,200 meters of yarn for this pattern. So yeah, we'll continue on with this bolero, and I think I can work it up quite quickly. It's on 3.5 millimeter needles, and I'm almost done with one of the panels. So stay tuned to see how this bolero turns out and how much yarn that I need for it. Okay, so that was everything for whips, and moving on to acquisitions. I just have 2 acquisitions to share that aren't knitting related, but I wanted to bring it up because I have some questions for other sewists here. If you knit and sew, I'd love to get your opinion. So it all kind of stemmed from knitting. I want to learn how to sew, mainly because there are some knitting projects that it would be much easier if you have a sewing machine to finish that project. So I really want to make some knitted pillows, but a lot of pillows have a back that you sew onto it, and you usually sew it on with a machine. Same as some knit bags. I really want to knit some purses or clutches, but it would be much easier to sew in the lining with a sewing machine. I knit my zipper sweater, which would have been a lot easier if I had a sewing machine, but instead I knit the whole thing, I sewed the whole thing by hand. So I just really want to learn how to sew. I did learn how to sew in high school, but it's been over 10 years since I touched a sewing machine. So yeah, I've been really wanting to get into sewing, so I've been getting some supplies to gear up for that. Yes. I got some of this fabric from Uknit when I was picking up the Knitting for Olive Merino Petroleum Blue, which the dye lots weren't the same, but yeah, I ended up going to Uknit for that. And Uknit is a local yarn store in Toronto that sells yarn, but they also sell really beautiful fabric. And they have this little box of fabric on sale at the back of that section of the store. And you can get some heavily discounted fabric that's, I would say, pretty high quality. And I don't have a fabric stash. I don't really have any fabric, so I went there to kind of see what they had in that bin. So I got this fabric here. It's Dear Stella Frosty Forage. It was 1 yard for it's probably about $9, which I thought was okay price, maybe. I thought it was a cute print, so I got that. And then this one was really affordable, so this is definitely going to be the first test fabric that I use. This is the Lovely Hunt Raspberry Bramble Orange, and this was like $3, maybe even less than that, 40% off. And it's just this really bright fuchsia print. So I got this fabric. I've been getting some other sewing supplies, like I got those Clover sewing clips. I got some batting. I got an iron. I don't own an iron. I just use a steaming iron, but I know you need a pressing iron, so I got that. And I have all the supplies that I need to make some basic projects. So in addition to the knitting projects that I want, where sewing would be great, I also have been getting from my Instagram algorithm a lot of quilting projects, and those are just so beautiful. And so I really want to learn how to quilt just small accessories. I don't think I'll be quilting big blankets, but I thought I've seen some like quilted bookmarks or quilted pouches, which I think are good for beginners too, I think, because you don't really have to worry about sizing. So I do want to learn how to make all of those. So I've been getting all the supplies that I need to make them, except for the most important thing, which is the sewing machine. So I know that Janome is a good sewing machine brand. Brother too, and Singer I've heard mixed things about, but it is pretty accessible to get here in Canada, a Singer sewing machine. And I've been perusing Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji trying to get a sewing machine secondhand, because I don't need it to be anything fancy. I just need a beginner machine that's going to last. I think another brand is Juki. So I've been trying to find those brands, but they're a little bit harder to find on Facebook Marketplace or secondhand. So I have to be a little bit patient, but I'd love to know if you have any beginner sewing machine recommendations, which brand, which model, what features to look out for. I'd love to know, because yes, I've been gearing up and I have all the supplies, but the most important thing, which is the sewing machine, and I'm hoping that I can find one sometime this fall and start sewing. I don't think I'm going to, it's really early to say now. I know that I know knitting has my heart, but it is fun to be experimenting with different crafts. Maybe I'll talk about it here, maybe I won't, but I need the sewing machine first. So yeah, let me know if you have any sewing machine recommendations. I'm gonna try to spend around like $100 to $200 on the machine, so I also don't want to spend too much on it. So yeah, let me know. And apart from that, that was everything for this podcast episode. I'm not going to talk about plans because my fall knitting plans with stash yarn video is going to be coming soon. I'm just finalizing some things, looking at some projects that I want to add to it. And I have my latest video, which is the late summer knits pattern inspiration video, which a few of my current whips have come from that. So if you haven't seen that video, check it out if it sounds interesting to you. And so thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much if you reach this point in the video. I always forget to say this, but if you reach this point in the video, I hope that means that you liked it. And if you like my content, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It really helps out my channel as I continue to grow and chat about knitting. So yeah, thank you again. And until my next video, happy knitting.